Her story begins in Iowa, in West Des Moines, about 2 hours from the university campus.
We're definitely a sports family more than anything.
She is from a family of athletes. She has brothers.
I was super competitive, so I think that kind of like fueled me and wanted to play sports, especially basketball.
She has this hyper-competitive streak that her family has talked about from an early age. Her brother needs staples in his head after a third game goes sideways. There's this sense that she's really wired a certain way.
I honestly started playing sports with boys before girls.
And she really starts to play with the boys, both in her family and otherwise.
I won like league MVP one year, and like parents were mad. They're like, "This is a boys' league. How can a girl be the MVP?" So it's just...
And she's, shooting hoops in the driveway. Eventually her range becomes so extensive that her dad has to take some grass out of the lawn to make more driveways so she can shoot from further away.
Amazing.
She also has role models.
Maya Moore, she's like my first ever WNBA game. I actually met her, which is...
And Maya Moore, she has this story she likes to tell of seeing her play.
All I ever wanted to do was meet her. I didn't have a phone, so I just ran over, gave her a hug, ran away. It's like the most vivid memory I have of like women's basketball growing up.
And sort of sees herself following that tradition. And then, as a teenager, she becomes enough of a sort of buzzed about basketball player that even some really prominent national figures like Kevin Durant, the men's basketball player, start to notice her, and she winds up committing to the University of Iowa, staying in her home state. It was immediately clear that the program, which, I think was seen as like a solid program, not necessarily a perennial powerhouse, was going to be seen in a different way with somebody like Caitlin on the roster.
So the team was okay, and suddenly it was getting this incredible player.
This incredible player, this sort of generational talent, and somebody who coaches have talked about really having to bridle is a word that they use, as if she were a racehorse, something that they had to sort of figure out how to make exist in a team context.
Okay, bridle is an interesting word. What about her specifically was different than other players on the team?
She just had talents that not a lot of players had, and her coaches and teammates have talked about her own expectations of herself being so high that sometimes her expectations of her teammates were such that she could be disappointed if they bobbled a pass that she threw that they didn't expect, if they missed a shot off of some pass of hers, if the coaches did something that she didn't necessarily think was wise. So there was this sort of a learning curve for her and for the team and her coaches for how to best channel all of that in a team setting.
Here's Clark. She fires.
But certainly the talent was clear. She was, a leading scorer as a freshman.
Holy smokes. Another deep three from Caitlin Clark.
She was taking these long three-pointers from all over the court.
Clark from the logo.
There's a logo at midcourt in Iowa that's a sort of Hawkeye beak.
Clark. Oh my gosh.
And she's taking shots from like the edge of the beak.
In other words, from very far out, right?
From very far out, with this just boundless shooting range, pulling up from places on the court that most players wouldn't conceive of shooting from, and consistently making shots, and having a defense need to sort of account for her so far away from the basket creates room for other players to operate.
Okay, so when does she go to stratospheric fame with that?
So in last year's NCAA tournament, March Madness, round after round, she's just carrying Iowa with these spectacular viral moments, these incredible passes, with a roster that's not necessarily considered a real powerhouse in the tournament. And it's compelling to watch, obviously, seeing somebody shoot from that far, seeing somebody carry a team like that, beating teams that maybe seemed more formidable than Iowa, and the attention grows. She acquires a nickname at the time, Ponytail Pete, after Pete Maravich, who was an incredible college basketball player and professional in the 60s and 70s.
He did not have a ponytail.
He did not have a ponytail. He had pretty shaggy hair. Maybe could have had a ponytail if he wanted to. And has this really spectacular run all the way to the Final Four, where they face off against South Carolina, seen as the best team in the country, undefeated to that point. I was a big underdog, and on the strength, really largely of Caitlin's brilliance on the court, they win. They defeat the sort of Goliath. They go to the championship game, and really nobody saw them getting that far.
And the national championship game is underway.
So what happens in that final game?
So in that final game, it's Iowa against LSU.
Louisiana State?
Louisiana State, which is another really compelling cast of characters. The loaded roster headlined by Angel Reese, their star player.
Angel Reese, gorgeous delivery inside.
A really colorful coach, Kim Mulkey.
Smart awareness by LSU on these mismatches in the post.
And it does sort of pit these two programs against each other, two really compelling casts of players and supporting characters meeting in this epic final. It's a very competitive game, back and forth, and it's viewed by almost 10 million people. Wow. Which is a far and away record for a women's final. Really not that very often in a men's final.
What are you doing?
And it's a good game.
Sleeping.
It's not down to the wire to the very end necessarily. A competitive game, but it's not quite enough. They lose. But the story doesn't necessarily end there.
Lindsay with USA State again. Caitlin, can you tell us at the end of the game what happened? There's a lot blown up on Twitter about Angel Reese following you around.
In the days afterwards, there was this sort of controversy around Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, essentially over a celebration that Caitlin Clark had done previously in the tournament that was sort of putting her hand in her face. It's called the "you can't see me" kind of taunting that sort of amounts to trash talk on the court.
So she's basically saying, ha ha.
She's saying ha ha with her hands.
Yeah, okay.
And with the scoreboard at the time. And then in the final, when LSU is pulling away, Angel Reese does the same gesture at Clark and is very clearly kind of taunting Clark as I was about to lose and have their tournament run end.
She was obnoxious.
Yes.
She was obnoxious.
Keith Olbermann said on the comments of this was his comments on a young woman who is in college winning a championship. What an effing, but spelled out the word, idiot.
The difference in the fallout is that Angel Reese, who is black, faced quite a bit of criticism for this taunting, in the sense that it was unsportsmanlike.
I'm too hood, I'm too ghetto. Y'all told me that all year. But when other people do it, y'all don't say nothing. So this
And
is for the
Caitlin Clark, who was white, had not really faced any of that. So there was this sense of a double standard. In the coverage of this, there was this real momentum to kind of pit the two of them against each other as these two stars of the sport, one white, one black, and Caitlin Clark was not so interested in any of that.
I don't think Angel should be criticized at all.
And, says she has nothing but respect for Angel Reese, loves how she plays, loves her game, competition is good.
I think everybody knew there was going to be a little trash talk in the entire tournament. It's not just me and Angel. Across any sport, that's how it should be. So
She says men trash talk all the time. And why should this be any different?
you should be able to play with that emotion. That's how I'm going to continue to play. That's how every girl should continue to play. So
And ultimately this becomes a sort of long tail of the final itself. You had this moment with these incredible ratings for the game, and then you had this kind of secondary moment of this pseudo-controversy, and all of it is drawing eyeballs to women's basketball in a way that hadn't really happened in the decades that had been around.
And even for people who don't follow basketball, right? I mean, I had heard about it around that time, probably precisely for that reason.
Absolutely. You had people who had never watched Caitlin Clark play a minute of basketball consuming the story in a new way. So it really was this time last year, taken together, the tournament experience and this sort of post-mortem, that Caitlin Clark becomes more than a basketball player. She becomes a national figure on a very different scale.
We'll be right back.
Hi, it's Michael Sullivan from Wirecutter, the product recommendation service from the New York Times. And today we're in the kitchen testing canned tomatoes. We'll be tasting them 2 times, right out of the can, and then again in Marcella Hazan's tomato sauce. I'm seeing lots of people.
All right, last
Everyone will
minute
take
blinker,
handwritten notes,
the
and then
winner.
I'll compile them all in a spreadsheet. You really want it to be something that is collaborative. I label them by a letter or a number because we don't want anyone to be swayed by a particular brand. We're tasting for sweetness, acidity, definitely the color, the texture. We're doing 195 grams of onions per batch of tomato sauce. So these are a little firmer because this had calcium chloride added to it. these tomatoes. They're pretty velvety, like they break apart easily with a spoon. The guides that we write are living, breathing things. It's a piece of fruit in a can, so it's going to change every year. At Wirecutter, we do the work so you don't have to. For independent product reviews and recommendations for the real world, come visit us at nytimes.com/wirecutter. Talk with my mouthful.
So Matt, you just told me that Caitlin Clark at the end of last season really went from being a basketball player in the state of Iowa to something much bigger, something really on the national stage. Tell me about that.
So she emerges from last season with a whole new profile, a lot of new fans, a lot of new attention, and in this sort of fluke of historical timing, Caitlin Clark's college career is coming along at a time when there is this massive shift happening in college sports. Prior to 2021, college athletes could not make money off of their name, image, and likeness. Now, that's a possibility. So that combined with being an extremely effective narrator of her own story, she's becoming extremely famous in a time when becoming extremely famous as a college athlete is very lucrative business.
So, okay, this translates to sponsors and advertisers. Presumably, they come calling.
They do. Quite a few of them.
Iowa's Caitlin Clark now has her own brand of cereal on High.
So Clark is the latest athlete to join Nike's lineup. She's among
the sorts of sponsors who associate with professional players.
Shoot. Okay, I'll shoot.
What's happening?
But I don't see any kill.
State Farm.
If we can draw 56,000 fans, you can draw 57.
Gatorade.
If I can sign with Gatorade, you can too.
But these are not, local car dealerships. These are major national brands.
This is not, she's obviously huge in Iowa, but these are national brands who come calling and who stay very much a part of the picture.
A 6-foot senior from West Carolina, number 22,
So by the time her senior season starts for 23-24, I mean, this thing is off and running.
The first sellout in the history of the women's program here at Northwestern, of course, the big draw.
I went to a couple of games, both at home and on the road.
Been packed mostly the entire day, and that's because of this line that formed here. It is stretching, I think I've heard about a quarter mile around the building.
And it's just a rock concert everywhere.
Let's go, Caitlin Clark! I got to be like Caitlin.
A lot of kids with signs, I want to be like Kate. They're wearing her jersey.
You definitely changed the game for the better and even just changed the world.
But so are, a lot of, grown men. People are driving hours to see her. They're selling out arenas.
Over 52,000 tickets have been sold.
Not a single empty seat with crowds flocking to see Iowa Hawkeyes star Caitlin Clark.
Secondary ticket prices for resale are going for $400, $500. It's really become kind of the hottest thing in town, and celebrities are going to Iowa City to watch college basketball. And there is this really kind of breakthrough cultural power. She knows this. She knows she's being consumed in this way, and she'll file away little scenes that she takes in. There was a game at Iowa that I was at. There was this girl.
It was cute. She was copying our stretching warming up, so I thought it was adorable. She was doing
She noticed before the game, so she files that away. They play the game. She plays great. They win. She goes up to the girl and gives her the shoes that she had worn for the game.
What does the little girl do?
She actually, she's beaming.
That is probably the most special moment that has ever happened.
Something easy I can make her day, and I'm sure she loved it, so it was cool.
But Caitlin has sort of talked about that being her experience as a fan at that age too. And it really keeps going.
Here comes Clark. How will she go for history?
She's essentially breaking a new record every few games. She has the most points of anybody to ever play on the women's side. Eventually, it's the men's record.
Caitlin Clark becomes the all-time leading scorer in major college basketball history.
Either men or women, nobody has scored more points playing college basketball in Division I than Caitlin Clark.
Wow.
It's quite something. The record she broke on the men's side was held by Pete Maravich, to whom she was compared last year. So it's a lot of history that she's transcended. And you see the sport itself start to reap some of the benefits of this newfound attention. The television contract for the women's tournament valued the tournament at $65 million annually, which was a many-fold increase over the last contract. there's a sense that ratings will persist. And she's also not the only player in the country right now getting a lot of attention. There are great players throughout the college game, including Angel Reese, Juju Watkins, who's a freshman at USC, who are really, frankly, bigger stars than any men's college basketball player right now. So this doesn't just begin and end with Caitlin, and it won't end for college sports when she leaves. Obviously, Caitlin Clark will not be a college basketball player forever, but she helped drive attention to the sport, and there is a hope that it can sustain itself after she's gone.
So this tremendously popular college player is really kind of blowing up the sport economically and culturally, but as you say, she's not going to be in college forever. At some point, she's going to graduate.
She will, so she faces this choice. Despite being a senior, there was this allowance given to athletes during COVID to stay for an extra year. So really all year she's faced this choice. People have asked her about it constantly. Will she go back to school for a fifth season, or will she turn pro?
But Matt, why wouldn't she go pro? I mean, isn't it every athlete's aspiration and goal to go pro? I mean, she's getting a ton of attention, selling out stadiums. Like, why would going pro even be a question?
Yeah, if she were a male college athlete playing basketball, this might be a lot more straightforward. The best players in college on the men's side tend to go pro at the first opportunity. There is money to be made. There are eyeballs in the NBA. On the women's side, there's the WNBA, the Professional Basketball League for Women, and it's just a very different thing. You know, it's a league that has gotten far fewer viewers than women's college basketball. It is a league that doesn't have the attendance of the games that Caitlin Clark has been playing in at Iowa. And for some context, there were more than 9 million people, almost 10 million people who watched the national championship game that Caitlin Clark played in last year. The college tournament, the WNBA finals last year for the professional league were viewed by under 1 million people. So we're talking about, you know, a fraction, a tenth.
So much less.
So much less. And, you know, Caitlin Clark is not making a kind of formal salary as a player in college, but her stature does afford her a kind of profile that has made these sponsorships possible, that has made her earning potential pretty stratospheric. And it's hard to say if that will translate in a league where the viewership is not the same. You know, being the biggest star in college basketball at the moment affords you a bigger platform than being the biggest star in the WNBA. But it's just not consumed in the same way that college sports has been.
And why is that, Matt?
I think there's a couple reasons. There is this kind of tribal quality to college sports fandom. You know, you go to a school, you become a fan of the school, you live in an area, you become a fan of that team.
Mm-hmm.
The WNBA is such a young league. It's, you know, barely older than Caitlin Clark is.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't necessarily been that same attachment formed to the teams. And despite a lot of really passionate fans and some improvements in attention over the years, there was the Olympic team having women's basketball in 1996. There was the onset of WNBA, obviously. There have been moments with stars in the league, like Amaya Moore, Diana Taurasi, but it hasn't sustained in the way that I think some might have hoped.
Okay, so far lower viewership. I'm assuming that that's translating into lower salaries.
It does. Far lower salaries. Caitlin Clark, who's widely expected to be the first pick in the draft for the WNBA, will make about $75,000 in salary for her rookie season.
That's pretty low.
It's pretty low, particularly when you compare it to the NBA. The first pick last year makes about $12 million this year, and it just accelerates on the veteran scale too. So you have like the very best players in the WNBA making, you know, more than $200,000 as the kind of ceiling. But we're talking about just a totally different stratosphere than the men's game, where you have all sorts of contracts in the tens of millions per year. Caitlin Clark's been compared to Steph Curry in the NBA, the incredible shooter from Golden State. He makes about $50 million a year.
God, that's a huge differential.
Huge differential. So what you've seen a lot of female players do over the years is supplement that income by playing abroad in other leagues professionally. This is why Brittany Griner was in Russia. It's why players have traveled internationally for many years to try to make some of that money that wasn't available to them in WNBA salary some other way.
Okay, so Caitlin Clark had this decision to make, go pro or stay another year in her college team. What did she decide to do?
She decided to go pro, and I think there are a couple of reasons for that. I think there's a real strong basketball case. Going back to Iowa, having that experience again, maybe she doesn't grow as a player in the same way that she might to go pro, compete against the best. There's also the sponsorship side. She actually can, you know, retain a lot of the sponsors that she's had. Gatorade sticking with her, Nike's going to be around. And, you know, I think there's a sense that she might be the exception that changes things. She hopes that she is part of the, you know, next generation of players who can draw more eyeballs to that league, who can maybe, over the long run, raise salaries, bring sponsorship dollars to the pros. She also can't stay in college forever. She can't be in Iowa until she's 40.
So essentially, Caitlin's bet here is that she can take all of her firepower that she has right now and potentially transform women's basketball. But how likely is that really, Matt?
You know, it's hard to know at this point. There are some data points so far that are pretty encouraging if you're Caitlin Clark and the WNBA. Tickets are already being sold. Ticket prices are up because of the demand for games for the Indiana Fever, who have the first pick in the professional draft coming up, are expected to take Caitlin Clark. So this hasn't even happened yet. She has not been officially selected first, and we're already seeing ticket prices and ticket sales spiking in anticipation for Caitlin Clark showing up. But I think there is a sense that she is entering the league on a different level of stature with a different profile, but it's untested.
So, Matt, what does the phenomenon of Caitlin Clark tell us about women's sports?
It tells us it's come a pretty long way. You know, in some ways, she's kind of the culmination of this long arc that dates to Title IX, which was, you know, legislation that dictated that there could not be discrimination on the basis of sex, and was applied widely to sports, creating opportunities for women. And at the time, obviously, this had to be legislated. This had to be mandated. What is happening now with Caitlin Clark, this is the free market deciding that they're pretty interested in women's sports. You know, sports is a business, and there is a strong business case, as many sponsors are deciding for themselves, to watch Caitlin Clark, to follow Caitlin Clark, for leagues to want Caitlin Clark in their midst. And then there's this sort of broader cultural point. Her coaches have talked about just the role model she is for tenacity, and, you know, she was given a technical foul last year after saying damn it to herself after she missed a shot. It's the sort of thing that would, like, never be penalized in the men's game. They printed t-shirts that said damn it, and she posed with somebody. Like, she has owned the kind of competitive streak that men have been owning for so long. And I think modeling that beyond the sort of business case is a real legacy that she's left.
Yeah, like, don't judge me differently, right?
Don't judge me differently. And, you know, her coach still thinks that there is not as much latitude given to women athletes, and I think that's certainly true. But it's moved them. I think there is certainly more space given to that kind of competitive fire in a female athlete than there might have been even a few years ago.
Hi, my name is Tina. Will you be using a mobile app today?
Yes.
Go ahead with your code.
TA57.
Russell.
Yep.
One moment, please. My machine is lagging. Just bear with me a second.
No, you're fine.
All right. Go to the first window. Let them know you have a mobile, sir. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Yep. Thanks.
Hello, honey.
Thank
Do
you.
you have the tray order, or do you have the 2 orders?
Nope. Just, yep.
Have a good one.
Thanks. Alright, breakfast time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Iowa is scheduled to play on Saturday. It will be the first game of the last tournament of Caitlin Clark's college career. We'll be right back.
This spot is brought to you by Eaton Vance, the symbol of advanced investing. What's inside your ETF? With Parametric Equity Premium Income ETF, you know. Inside, you'll find institutional expertise from a specialized team with deep derivatives experience. Get to know what's inside PAPI, the symbol of alternative income, at eatonvance.com/symbols. Before investing, prospective investors should carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. The current prospectus contains this and other information and is available at eatonvance.com. Read the prospectus carefully before investing. Not FDIC insured. Offer no bank guarantee. May lose value. Not insured by any federal government agency. Not a deposit. Investments involve risk. Principal loss is possible. Distributed by Foresight Fund Services, LLC.
Here's your money briefing for Thursday, March 21st. I'm J.R. Whalen for the Wall Street Journal. Yesterday, the Federal Reserve reaffirmed its plan to lower interest rates later this year. That could mean an end to the healthy returns that savers have been earning on their cash for the past 2 years.
Financial analysts say that rates on high-yield savings accounts are likely to fall first because those adjust monthly, whereas Treasury bills and certificates of deposit are going to fall later because those are in different durations.
We'll talk to Wall Street Journal personal finance reporter Oyen Adedoyan after the break.
The less your business spends, the more margin you keep. NetSuite by Oracle brings accounting, finance, inventory, and HR into one proven platform, helping you reduce costs everywhere. Now through April 15th, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind flexible financing program. So head to netsuite.com/Wall Street right now.
The expected lowering of interest rates later this year means there could be more attractive investments than just putting away cash. Wall Street Journal personal finance reporter Oyen Adedoyan joins me. Oyen, what is the current return on investing cash?
It really depends on which device you're investing in, but certificates of deposit, money market funds, and Treasury bills and high-yield savings accounts are all yielding over 5% right now.
When the Fed does announce a rate cut, which rates on people's money are likely to fall first?
Financial analysts say that rates on high-yield savings accounts are likely to fall first because those adjust monthly, whereas Treasury bills and certificates of deposit are going to fall later because those are in different durations. So you can get a 1-year Treasury bill or a 6-month Treasury bill, and that won't fall until that bill matures.
We talked a lot about how CDs became an attractive investment as rates rose over the past 2 years. With the Fed signaling a rate cut could be coming this year, how have people adjusted those investments?
I spoke with a woman in Connecticut who bought a 3-month CD last year at 3.75%. Then she got a 10-month CD at 5.2%, and after that, she started to build a ladder out of half a dozen 6-month Treasury bills. That was easy to do last year because yields just continued to go up. But this year, it seems like people are either deciding to separate themselves from these types of investing instruments or get into longer-term cash deposit instruments. People have been buying CDs with the most attractive yields. According to Kiranos, a data and consulting firm, about 60% of all CDs that consumers purchased in February were yielding above 5%, and nearly all of those stood above 4.5%. So people are still, even this year, looking for the most attractive yield they can find.
We hear the term ladder a lot when it comes to Treasury bills. What does that mean?
It basically just means buying different durations of Treasury bills or CDs at different times so that when one duration matures, you can put it into another CD or Treasury bill without interrupting the yield on another duration.
What changes have banks put into place regarding investments and rates?
Well, in anticipation for rate cuts, banks are already starting to offer highest yields for shorter terms. So about 70% of high-rate CDs that opened in February lasted less than a year. Financial analysts say that most consumers look at the rate first and the term second. People are grabbing those shorter-term yields, but the term's probably going to be more important going into the future, especially if the central bank does decide to cut rates later this year. If interest rates do fall this year, someone who buys a one-year CD today at, say, 5% or above might end up gaining more in interest than someone who locks in a higher rate for only 6 months. Now, that's of course if the CD isn't callable, which means that the bank can stop issuing it at any time, and that means the person who bought the CD might miss out on that extra interest.
How would you find out if it's callable or not?
Usually, CDs will come with a descriptor that includes what type of CD it is, or you can inquire further with the bank that you're buying it from.
So if it's not callable, then the rate is good for the duration of the CD?
Exactly.
Besides choosing a different term for a CD investment, where else are people putting money?
I spoke with a financial advisor in Kansas. Started moving the money that has matured from their CDs or treasury bills back into the stock market. Actually, the woman in Connecticut is also doing that, though she's not a client of the advisor in Kansas. With the S&P 500 rising as high as 32% over the past year as of earlier this week, it's no question why people are looking at that as a more attractive investment now.
How could a potential rate cut affect home buyers?
Financial advisors say that locking in a longer-term CD right now might actually be beneficial for home buyers, especially if they put their down payment in there and aren't actually planning on buying a home until maybe a year or two down the line. At that point, if the Fed does cut rates, that could mean that mortgage rates might be a little bit more attractive.
That's WSJ reporter Oyen Adedoyan. And that's it for your Money Briefing. We'll be back tomorrow with WSJ's Lindsay Ellis to discuss steps the class of 2024 can take to land their first job out of college. This episode was produced by Ariana Oswaru with supervising producer Melanie Roy. I'm J.R. Whalen for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for listening.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Lisa. When you buy a Lisa mattress, you're not the only one getting a better night's rest. Lisa donates thousands of mattresses each year to shelters and those in need. Learn more about Lisa at leesa.com.
There were more than 3,000 book bans in public schools last year, 1,000 more than the year before.
To parents, don't give an inch on this. Speak up. Violence is never the answer. But show up, speak up.
A judge has ruled in favor of Temecula parents, students, and teachers suing their school district over two controversial policies.
The Library Association announced today it has seen a 92% increase in books targeted for censorship.
Supporters of book bans often say the books are inappropriate for the age group dealing with racial or gender identity, sexuality, and other difficult topics.
A lot of the times the books that are being complained about by parents, you can't even read in the public hearing.
This is about the children and their academic success, and it should be about nothing else. It's up to us to bring those children back to where they belong.
What do you think is the purpose of school for like your 8-year-old child?
This is Lawrence Wu. He's a producer on this show. We've both been hearing a lot about what you just heard. Headlines, debates, unbelievably tense school board meetings, seemingly everywhere, over what's taught in school. So we got to talking about it. Oof. So I think on like one hand, the purpose is to teach the kids basic mathematics, how to read and write, like the very most basic academic skills you learn. But then I have to say on the other hand, I also can't help but notice like they gotta be kind of inculcated with the values of the country, which is something that's kind of strange that I don't know how I feel about. seeing my kid go through it.
Yeah, just as a kid yourself, like, do you remember being cognizant of that?
Yeah, when I was in 4th grade, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and it like radicalized me in some ways, in the sense of like how I viewed school. And I remember I stopped standing for the pledge for a little while, and my dad had to come to school. But I was aware at that point that we weren't just being taught this basic stuff, that on some level we were being like, what I thought back then was brainwashed. Yeah, I know, maybe a little bit hyperbolic. I was also a kid. But if you open up any news site today or head to any school board meeting, people are asking similar questions. Like, what books should be in school libraries? What topics should be taught in what grades or at all? Lawrence doesn't have kids himself, but he knows someone who does.
I have been thinking about this a lot because I have an aunt.
I'm Amy Kotang. I have 2 kids. They're in 6th grade. They're 11 years old.
They're in the public school system. They're twins, actually. And she's like really active. She knows all about the parent drama, PTA drama, but there's also the culture war drama that's like happening in my hometown. And I found out about this through her because she ended up running for a Board of Ed seat last fall.
Wow, that's a big step.
We had 8 people running for 4 seats. It was like unheard of. In many municipalities, they couldn't even get one person to run.
So the race was competitive. And just a quick note, that Amy talked to us in her capacity as a private citizen, not as a board member. So all her opinions she's sharing are her own.
As she's running for this seat, they host a bunch of meet and greets, right? And the whole point of these meet and greets is like, you know, shake hands, be a politician, smile, let them know you're in the community, kiss babies, yeah. But something weird starts to happen where she starts to have these kind of experiences, one in particular.
We set up these meet and greet, and we would have folks show up. Like, I literally had an old lady who's probably don't have kids in the system, don't have anything to do with this. It was just, she came up with a little piece of like paper that was typed up for her and asked me about what do I think about books.
That's it, that's the question.
That's the question. And
I was like, ma'am, what do I think? I mean, I like my kids to read more. But what do you think about them putting age-inappropriate books in our library? So I'm not aware of any, but if you can give me an example, you know, I'd like to explore further.
Oh, man. And she kind of had multiple conversations that are similar to this, where it wasn't kind of this engagement and conversation, it was just a questioning.
We had to stop these meetings because they weren't about what we believe in. It was about how can we catch out, you know, saying things so that we can like tell people. And it wasn't built on trust. It wasn't built on an open exchange and listening.
And so there's the question. Is school a place for open exchange and listening? Or is it a place to learn the Pledge of Allegiance, study history that makes you feel good about your country? Even though it feels like we're living in a moment where even the mention of slavery is being questioned in history books, it's not an isolated event. So Lawrence went looking for answers, to find when this whole debate over schooling began, how it ended up becoming so controversial, and to answer a basic question: what exactly is school for? Turns out, he didn't have to go far.
The next town over was the site of a massive school battle, the kind of thing that would have happened today.
I'm Ramtin Arablouei. Coming up on Throughline from NPR, producer Lawrence Wu tells us a story about a media mogul, a textbook author, and a battle over what school means in the United States.
This is Justin Mish from Indianapolis, Indiana, and you're listening to Throughline from NPR.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Lisa. Join Lisa in the pursuit of better sleep for a better world. When you buy a Lisa mattress, you're not the only one getting a better night's rest. You're also helping fuel Lisa's work with shelters and those in need. Since 2015, Lisa has donated more than 40,000 mattresses to ensure children and families have a safe place to sleep. Visit lisa.com to learn more. That's LEESA.com. This message comes from NPR sponsor Betterment. The drama of having an enemy-turned-lover is never chill, but your investing portfolio should be. Betterment is the investing app that lets you be totally chill about your finances. Their automated tech makes it easy to get in the market and stay in the market. Save the drama for that moment when you realize your mortal enemy is actually your soulmate. Betterment, be invested, and totally chill. Learn more at betterment.com. Investing involves risk. Performance is not guaranteed.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Carvana. Shop for your next car the convenient way. 100% online with Carvana. Getting pre-qualified takes less than 2 minutes. Then see your real terms as you shop. Visit Carvana to finance your dream car the convenient way.
Part 1. An American School.
One of the most controversial U.S. textbook wars I came across happened right next door to where I grew up, the site of a major battle that made headline news. But before we get to the fight, let me take you back. It's 1850. A school lesson is taking place in a bustling town. Stands at the front and begins the day's lesson.
Guten Morgen, liebe Schüler. Heute werden wir mit der Lektüre beginnen.
In German.
Bitte sprecht mir nach.
They move to the next subject.
Hat jemand eine Idee?
Still in German.
Du? Bitte komm an die Tafel.
The whole school day, lessons are taught in German. But this town isn't in Germany or Austria or even Belgium. This school lesson is taking place in the middle of Ohio, in a town heavily populated by German immigrants.
The language of instruction in that school would have been German. It wouldn't have been English, because of course it wouldn't make any sense to teach kids in a language they don't know.
This is Charles Dorn. He is the Barry N. Wish Professor of Social Studies at Bowdoin College. He's also the co-author of Patriotic Education in a Global Age.
For most of the 19th century, and certainly earlier, America is thought of as a multilingual nation. You know, it was generally accepted. And so you could easily be conceived of as an American and be studying in German in school.
School was different then, too. A lot of students learned in segregated one-room classrooms led by a single teacher. There was no standard curriculum, and the students were all different ages. Most kids were lucky if they even had a public school nearby. But all of that was starting to change.
The late 19th, early 20th century, and it's a period of remarkable transformation in the United States. You know, we all think we live in like dramatically changing times, but wow, that really was a dramatically changing time.
The flow of immigration reached its peak between 1891 and 1920.
It's a country that's going from an agricultural economy to an industrial economy. So the rise of major metropolitan areas, the rise of cities is occurring.
During these years, a tremendous movement set in from the countries of Southern and Eastern Europe.
These are immigrants who are speaking different languages and they're practicing different faiths.
During this time period, over 20 million immigrants arrived, mostly from Europe.
From Austria-Hungary, Poland, Russia, Italy, and the Balkan Peninsula.
In many metropolitan areas, big cities in the United States, certainly on the eastern seaboard, the public school population is comprised of a majority of immigrant students. 60% of the students in most public schools in these major areas are immigrant students. In places like New York, it's 70%. And there is a real concern on the part of the native-born population, if you will, that these immigrants are different enough that it may be hard, if not impossible, to assimilate them into American society. And the schools are going to play a major role in this in a couple of different ways. By the time you get to the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, and most certainly during the period surrounding World War I, English becomes a marker of American identity, where suddenly it's no longer okay to speak a world language in a public school. Now you need to speak and learn English, because if you're going to be a real American, you need to be proficient in English. That's a brand new idea in the United States.
And schools started to change to reflect that idea.
You walk into a public school classroom, you see a flag, you don't even think twice about it. It's like, oh, there's the whiteboard and there's the flag. But there was a point in time in the United States when there were no flags in classrooms. This happened in the late part of the 19th century. And so just getting flags into classrooms was one example of that. And then, of course, the Pledge of Allegiance was another one.
There was a growing belief that schools should foster a sense of unity, of patriotism, and that became even more essential when the country entered World War I.
Once World War I does start, well, now the country has an enemy, and the enemy includes Germany. And so back in Ohio, when it was fine for schools to be teaching in German, that's not okay anymore. And so laws are passed to restrict the instruction in languages other than English in public schools.
There was more. And got involved in education, and they were a major force. In 1925, the Klan had around 4 million members.
Making sure public schools only taught the ideas that they thought were what they called 100% Americanism. Always, throughout the existence of the United States and before the colonial period, schools have always been the spark of social fighting.
This is Adam Latz. He's a professor of education at Binghamton University and author of The Other School Reformers. He has written extensively about culture wars in schools throughout American history.
Religious conservatives on one side and inclusivity progressives on the other. Those sides, those trenches, were dug in the 1920s. So, for example, the leader of the Klan at the time, Hiram Evans, complained that the control of textbooks had been taken away by un-American forces who were trying to force foreign American ideas into American school children.
You're beginning a year's study of interesting things about your own country and its people.
going to learn who Americans are, where they have all come from, how they live in different parts of the United States, what kinds of work they do, and many other things about the people whose life is different from yours, and from others of your town or city.
This is from a pamphlet that was published in 1922, right when the arguments over schooling and patriotism were heating up. It's the introduction for a middle school social studies class, all about immigrants and America's multicultural identity. The author is a man named Harold Rugg.
He wasn't a person that I would really like to have at my birthday party, but I'd say that he had this idea that if they could change the schools, if they can make a change in America's public schools, that will automatically be the lever that changes American society.
Coming up, Harold Rugg and his textbooks become public enemy number 1.
Hi, this is Nicole from October, Montana, and you're listening to Throughline on NPR.
Hey, it's Ramti. Before we get back to the show, we want to take a minute to say thank you so much to our Throughline Plus supporters and anyone listening who donates to public media. Everything you hear from the NPR network really does depend on your contributions. And for anyone listening who isn't a supporter yet, right now is a great time to get actively involved in creating a more informed public. If you like perks, Throughline Plus offers sponsor-free listening and behind-the-scene bonus episodes every month. If you get service going, please give today and donate at NPR.
On all other Apple Card with Apple Pay purchases, subject to credit approval. Terms apply.
At Planet Money, we take you to the furthest reaches. Listen to the Planet Money podcast from NPR.
Listen now to the Life Kit podcast.
To be inculcated with the idea that the United States is a second-rate country, that its form of government is open to question, that there are other countries more happily circumstanced and governed than ours? Bertie Charles Forbes.
Bertie Forbes was a Scottish immigrant who came to New York City in the early 1900s. He worked as a business journalist until he decided to start a little magazine known today as Forbes.
He really is a straight-up 20th century influencer. He has the equivalent of millions of likes and subscribes because he's got his magazine and he's got the ear of other journalists.
Which would prove to be very helpful when he hears about a series of textbooks that his local school district has been using.
He happens to be serving on the school board in his home school district in Englewood, New Jersey.
In 1940, Forbes joined his school board in the town of Englewood, New Jersey, which is actually just right next door to where my aunt Amy is currently serving her term on the school board. And as soon as Forbes joined, he quickly drummed up a warning.
He is speaking to, every newspaper, including his own magazine, about the dangers of these textbooks.
That these are anti-American. These books are attempting to undermine students' beliefs in the United States, in democracy, and basically he calls for the banning of these books from his school district.
If I were I would be converted by reading these Rugg books to the belief that our whole American system, our whole American form of government is wrong. That the framers of our Constitution were mostly a bunch of selfish mercenaries. That private enterprise should be abolished, and that we should set up communistic Russia as our model.
He really is putting this issue, these Rugg textbook issues, into the heart of America's anxieties about their public schools.
Okay, so what's the deal with Harold Rugg?
Yeah, Harold Rugg was an unpleasant person. And I say this as an admirer of his work. He was someone who had not just a big idea of his own powers, but an inflated idea of his own powers.
Rugg was born in Massachusetts in 1886 and became interested in the education field in the early 1900s.
In terms of appearance, he cultivates this Ivy League professorial stereotype. You know, thin, dressed in what you would think a Columbia professor would dress, so, you know, maybe a wide whale coat, maybe some tweed.
Like that professor you had in high school. Jacket and tie with some elbow patches for good measure.
The classic New York intellectual look, you know, doubled down on the fact that he would have social events that would draw some really big names in the era in terms of progressive politics, progressive thinking, and he would host them in a very sort of, you know, Great Gatsby way. And I mean that as an insult, not fashionable, but more like, you know, bitter and self-righteous and feeling superior to the rest of America.
Through schools of the world, we shall disseminate a new conception of government.
So Harold Rugg assumed that if he could capture the best of the social sciences and couple it with an anti-authoritarian classroom,
one that will embrace all of the collective activities of men.
If he could get this to every middle school in America, he could, in one generation, really make an actual profoundly democratic change in the way Americans related to one another by changing textbooks.
One that will postulate the need for scientific control and operation of economic activities in the interests of all people.
Rugg had a vision, and there were others like him. In 1920, at the time he became a professor at Teachers College at Columbia University, a progressive group of thinkers had emerged on campus. And of course, there was also another big wave rolling through American culture at this time. The Roaring '20s. After World War I, the country was on a high. The US was on top of the global stage, and there was this overall sense of optimism. You know, the Great Gatsby vibes. Leonardo DiCaprio in his tux, raising his glass out towards you. But Harold Rugg and a group of faculty members at the Teachers College were suspicious of this prosperity.
They are questioning this kind of prosperity that is developing the United States. And they'll begin to call into question some of the sort of rampant capitalism that they witness in the 1920s in the United States. And it eventually, of course, all comes crashing down in 1929.
The stock market buckled and crashed, and the nation's economy plummeted into the depression. By 1932, nearly 1 man out of 4 was unemployed.
And what these more progressive faculty members see in the crash is evidence that the United States needs to reconstruct its political and economic system.
Working men spent their days on park benches. The government set up public soup kitchens.
Harold Rugg comes out of that tradition. And rather than teaching the more sort of traditional history, which would be a sort of, a patriotic history of American progress, Rugg wants students to study problems. He wants the curriculum to be oriented around problem solving. But the idea here is that the students should be studying things that are basically wrong with the United States and seeking to solve those problems.
So in order to influence the next generation, Rugg needed to get writing. And he started out by writing these pamphlets.
The pamphlets you will read tell many true stories of real life which will surprise and interest you. They tell how people from all the other countries in the world have been coming to this country for many, many years. The important things that have happened to them, how they have become a part of our nation.
What he wanted to do was catalog this exploding field of social sciences. So, the first 3 decades of the 20th century, fields that are very established to us. Economics, sociology, current anthropology, basic social sciences are relatively new.
Of course, we are most interested in understanding what is going on today. We want to know what troubles our country is having and what dangers we, as a people, are facing. But in order to understand these things, we need to know how our country grew to its present size.
Rugg, with the help of a team of researchers, developed their first pamphlet series in 1920. It was written for 7th, 8th, and 9th graders.
So Rugg's original idea was the best knowledge of this recent generation of social scientists, and we'll get it into the schools.
Rugg wanted to see how his materials would do on a bigger scale, so he contacted former students who were now working at schools to ask if they would purchase a copy of his pamphlet. The second edition of the pamphlet series resulted in about 100,000 copies that were shipped to schools. The series overall would go on to sell around 750,000 copies of the pamphlets across the country.
And eventually a well-established textbook publisher will basically contract with Rugg to develop these pamphlets into a series of textbooks.
And make a book that was the absolute most modern collection of knowledge, and that would be the ultimate textbook.
And they really look different from earlier textbooks.
So they're all in contrast with what you might think of as a a textbook that represents a traditional political history, which maybe, let's say, has a chapter on the colonial period and then a chapter on the founding of the nation. These are very, very different from that. These are looking at social problems, economic problems, political problems. They are posing questions of students.
In one text, the focus is on helping them better understand the geography and history of America, as well as the people that make it up. The first chapter is titled, "What is an American? Can you tell an American by his appearance?"
Do you think the differences are in the shape of the face, the color of the hair and eyes, or are the differences in their clothing? What about the language they use? Do some of their phrases mark them as of foreign birth? What about the heroes they look up to and the poetry they love? Just what are the differences between people who are born here, those whose parents are born here, and those who come from other lands? What are the likenesses?
American identity and history are just one part of what Rugg's textbooks cover. They're wide-ranging.
Like the need to conserve natural resources. Rugg is making an argument that unfettered capitalism is responsible for the destruction of natural resources, and so there needs to be some regulation of that. And many of the problems that he does focus on, things like poverty in cities, poor living and health conditions, Rugg will focus on those and trying to get students to think what we would say today critically about some of the different, challenges. Now, I will say this, if you and I opened one of these textbooks and looked at it today, we would think, well, what's so radical about this? This doesn't seem so controversial. So you just have to keep in mind that in their historical context, they were actually quite different.
Between 1929 and 1939, Rugg sold over 1 million copies. At their peak, Rugg's textbooks were being used in more than 4,000 school districts nationwide.
And so by the time you get through the 1930s to about 1940, Rugg's books are some of the most popular textbooks in social studies classes in America.
And with popularity comes backlash.
He becomes a lightning rod in the late 30s, early 1940s.
Which brings us back to Bertie Forbes, sitting in his Board of Ed seat in 1940.
He liked to tell a story that he was talking to a group of middle schoolers in his town of Englewood, New Jersey, and they told him that their teacher had told them, using the Rugg textbook, the teacher had said, "Is there any country as great as the United States?" And one of the kids said, "No!" And the teacher, according to the kids, according to Forbes, read from her teacher's guide and said, "The answer is yes, America is just one country and there are other countries that are just as good." Forbes saw that as an unpatriotic, even a criminal act.
I mean to battle against such poisoning of the youth of America. I plan to insist that this anti-American educator's textbooks be cast out.
And Rugg will actually go on a kind of speaking tour in which he will go out and defend the use of his textbooks in a number of these different communities. And Englewood is one of these.
I comment first upon the attack upon my Americanism. Mr. Forbes accused me of being un-American, pro-Russian, a communist, and therefore of writing books that give young people an inaccurate and prejudiced picture of American life.
And what he encounters, in many cases, quite interestingly, is a fairly moderate crowd when he gets there. These are folks who are not out with pitchforks looking to, burn him in effigy. For the most part, there is this curiosity, actually, around what it is kids are learning in schools and how it is that there's so much controversy around them.
There is at stake, however, back of these personal attacks, a very important question. What shall we teach our children about American life in the modern world?
And he will present his case, arguing that, America is a great nation, and he often does make that claim, but that, like every other nation, it has its problems, and students are better educated when they have an opportunity to examine those problems and develop solutions.
We shall not close their eyes to the problems which confront our people on every hand. They are made aware of these problems anyway, through the home, press, radio, movies, and every other agency of community life. These are the things that I try to do through my books. I am compelled to conclude that Mr. Forbes does not wish to have American youth confront the problems of American life. He would bar controversial issues from the schools. He forgets that the very essence of the American spirit is intelligent and courageous understanding of our real conditions.
Rugg would actually win this battle. His books would remain on the shelves in Anglewood despite Forbes' efforts. But the fight wasn't over.
Conservative reactionaries think this is going in the exact wrong direction. We need to be teaching kids about how great the nation is, not about all its problems.
And one of the remarkable things about the controversy is how fast that all came crashing down.
Coming up, the war on Rugg's textbooks grows bigger.
Hi, this is Kelly calling from rainy Portland, Oregon. You're listening to Throughline from NPR.
Getting bogged down by how much new music there is out there? There's a lot. Consider a daily dose of the All Songs Considered podcast. It's the easiest way to get tuned into the music world. We spend hours combing through the new music universe, from emerging bands to time-tested icons, to bring you your next favorite artist. To get up on your music know-how, listen to All Songs Considered from NPR.
Part 3. Un-American.
Americanism is love of America. Americanism is a vital, active living force. Americanism is a way of life, the best way of life ever known.
These are definitions of Americanism from the 1950s, produced by a veterans organization called the American Legion.
From coast to coast and border to border, American Legionnaires take over the heart of Manhattan for their 29th annual convention.
What you're hearing is coverage of their annual parade in New York.
American Legion, at the time, it's kind of new. It was started after World War I as a veterans organization. And it was started as a sort of social group for veterans of World War I.
2 million spectators jammed the sidewalks, windows, roofs, and every point of vantage. And between this massive throng of humanity, over 50,000 Legionnaires passed with majestic dignity, representing the Legion's entire membership of 3.25 million men.
So by the late 1930s, they have an Americanism commission in the national leadership to say, hey, our organization, it's not just about veterans benefits, it's about making sure the schools are only teaching a certain type of patriotic citizenship education. And they're not letting any ideas like Harold Rugg's in.
Where there are good schools, we find good citizens. In fact, education is the first requisite of good citizenship. The relationship of the American Legion is that of a friendly and firm supporter of free education as a means of keeping and improving a free civilization.
Harold Rugg was also really invested in having educated citizens. But he thought the way to do it was to talk about America's problems and have kids learn the skills to solve them. The American Legion of that era was not having it.
The American Legion takes the side of Bertie Forbes and others who feel that Rugg's textbooks are, in fact, indoctrinating children into anti-American ways of life and belief.
But in order to go after Rugg, the American Legion needed to tell people who he was in the first place and what kind of ideas he'd been sending into their children's classrooms.
And so they have a publication, the American Legion magazine,
Basically reports, features, and interviews about national issues and topics. And they write a bunch of articles attacking Rugg and his textbooks.
It's time we learned that our children are being taught in the name of civics, social science, and history doctrines so subversive as to undermine their faith in the American way of life.
A Legionnaire named O.K. Armstrong, and he told the story of talking to his son who came home from school with these kind of textbooks. And Armstrong wrote a piece in the Legion magazine about how dangerous these textbooks were, and just generally how dangerous people like Harold Rugg were.
Catch 'em young. That's the motto of the radical and communistic textbook writers who all too evidently have been in control of the field.
And they said these writers, these quote-unquote experts, they are friendly with communists. They are trying to sneakily infiltrate these ideas into your children's brains. And the American Legion line was, I'm not exaggerating when I say, they said, you could probably read this textbook if you're just a parent in the United States, and it might even seem fine to you because you don't have your ear attuned, and this is a quote, for the weasel words. That Harold Rugg uses.
At a time when the very existence of our republic is threatened by totalitarian ideology and aggression, the public schools must be regarded as one of the major arms of our internal defense.
So the idea was that there was a code, the American Legion's idea, a code embedded in these textbooks intentionally to turn children against their country.
Harold Rugg swung back in defense in an article by the New York Herald Tribune.
Far from being subversive, we're teaching youngsters the magnificent developments in American life. But we're not whitewashing or ignoring the problems. I try to sell democracy. I believe in it, and I make no bones about it.
But no matter how sincere Rugg's words, it hardly made a dent as the list of attacks on him grew longer.
To spread the word about this dangerous, communist-influenced type textbook, they're also spies into classrooms in places like Columbia University to note down what these purportedly left-wing professors are saying, to run those professors out of the business. So it's a widespread public relations campaign. A lot of it sounds very similar to the kind of headlines we're seeing these days. The idea was they were trying to convince America, and I think they sincerely believed it, that there was this life or death danger from these textbooks, and they had to be combated. You know, just like you would combat, poison in your drinking water, you had to combat this kind of intellectual poison in your school books.
And that feels more essential as World War II begins.
The Nazi masters of Germany
have made it clear that they intend not only to dominate all life and thought in their own country, but also to enslave the whole of Europe.
The war breaks out in Europe in September of '39. We have German troops storming into Poland. Before long, the German army is going to be occupying France. There is an obvious threat to democracy in Europe as a result of these fascist movements.
We must be the great arsenal of democracy. For us, this is an emergency as serious as war itself.
It's only a matter of time before war comes to the United States. And there is the development at this moment in time of a general sense of America may have to go to war. What is it that we're going to be fighting for?
For the 16 million young men who register today, I say that democracy is your cause, the cause of you.
There will be a draft, beginning with young men ages 21 and eventually then down to 18. Well, what are we fighting for? We're fighting for the American way of life. That's what we're fighting for. Okay, well then any project that calls that way of life into question can be seen as undermining America's legitimacy on the world stage and in the Second World War. And that's where Rugg will get into trouble.
Now you see it again and again. Will America be ready for the next battle if all of its youth are told that America is not worth fighting for? When an enemy comes calling, these textbooks will just make America roll over and accept socialist overlords.
Fears of fascism, communism, socialism, anything that wasn't Americanism made labels like subversive and un-American that much more damaging to Rugg's reputation.
And in that way, those voices are extremely successful because they do, in fact, wind up basically with districts pulling the books from the shelves and canceling their orders.
And in some cases, communities considered the extreme. In Binghamton, New York, 2 members of the school board proposed publicly burning the textbooks.
This is 1940. 1940, just to put it in context, there's a very famous group burning textbooks in 1940. It's the Nazis. So Americans are keenly aware, and I bring it up only because the feelings are so intense that even book burners are aware that, okay, we know that no one wants to be a book burner, but in this case, the danger is so immediate, we have to do every single thing to get rid of this dangerous content for our children.
General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations.
By the time the war is over, the textbook series is essentially, if it hasn't been removed from schools, districts simply haven't ordered new books. And if you think about this from the perspective of a school district superintendent, it's simply easier not to order new Rugg textbooks and get involved in the controversy.
And what happens to Rugg? He's able to keep teaching at Columbia's Teachers College until 1951 when he retires. He ends up writing one more textbook to little fanfare before he passes. But it wasn't like he was the only person writing social science textbooks during the 30s and 40s. And if Rugg's textbooks are being pulled, something else has to replace them. And here's the irony. The authors of those new textbooks are also progressive thinkers. But they saw what happened to Rugg, and they toned their writing down.
And so the attack on the Rugg text does have a kind of chilling effect on what other textbook authors are willing to include, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, really the only textbooks that are removed from school districts on a large scale are the Rugg texts, and they're replaced by, in some ways, almost equally progressive textbooks. And I do want to point something out, and that is that if we go back to the Harold Rugg controversy, the American Legion didn't identify just the Harold Rugg texts for removal from schools. It had a list of over 30 books that it wanted removed from schools and school libraries.
The person who proposed this was actually O.K. Armstrong. the author of that first article about Rugg. He had a list of 38 books he wanted off. But there was a backlash.
The only book that it was successful in removing was the Harold Rugg text. And so relatively speaking, that conservative movement was a failure in that it was not able to build the kind of momentum that was necessary to remove many, many different books and texts and to ban them from school.
That was close to a century ago. But in the 2022-2023 school year, there were 3,362 book bans in K-12 schools across the country, a 33% increase over the year before. States like Florida, Texas, and Missouri led the charge with the most books banned, with many of the targeted books centered around stories of people of color and LGBTQ+ individuals. In total, 33 states banned books. All of this brings us to this question, one that was at the center of the Harold Rugg controversy and today's schooling controversy.
What are public schools for? When we talk about our current school culture wars being a 100-year war, this is the question that has always been the same, question. The public school, I think, for a lot of Americans of all different political backgrounds and attitudes, the public school is supposed to tell children who they are. But the contention comes with well, who are we? Who is America? Is America a multiracial, inclusive, welcoming society that is stronger through its diversity? That's one very strong and traditional idea. That was Harold Rugg's guiding idea. It's my guiding idea. Or this other tradition has been strong since the 1920s, that the public schools need to teach kids that we, the people, are a uniquely heroic, liberty-loving type of person.
You know, it's a bit cliche, but I still think the most important role for schools today is to educate students to be competent citizens, to think in terms of their civic-minded responsibilities, and to contribute to the maintenance of a democratic society. There are lots of other roles that they play, and they should play, but I still think that's the primary role.
And that's it for this week's show. I'm Randa Abdel Fattah.
I'm Ramteen Arablouei, and you've been listening to Throughline from NPR.
This episode was produced by me.
And
Lawrence Wu,
Julie Kay, Anya Steinberg, Casey Miner, Christina Kim,
Devin Katayama, Peter Balanon Rosen,
Irene Noguchi.
Thanks to Chris Carnati, Hannah Yvonne Snyder, Blaze Adler Ivanhoe, Svenja Peterson, Bowie Alexander, and Sean Hartman for their voiceover work. Fact-checking for this episode was done by Kevin Vogel. The episode was mixed by Robert Rodriguez.
Our music was composed by Ramteen and his band Drop Electric, which includes Anya Mizani,
Naveed Marvi, Sho Fujiwara.
Thanks to Johannes Durkee, Kara West, Edith Chapin, and Colin Campbell. And finally, we want to hear from you. This year, we here on Throughline are doing a series that takes a close look at the past, present, and future of amendments to the U.S. Constitution. We'll be going back in time to tell stories of why they were created, how they've been enforced, and why fights over their meaning continue to shape life in America. So please, if there's a particular amendment you'd like to know more about, write us. We're here at throughline.npr.org.
Thanks for listening.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Lisa. When you buy a Lisa mattress, you're not the only one getting a better night's rest. Lisa donates thousands of mattresses each year to shelters and those in need. Learn more about Lisa at leesa.com.
Want all of NPR without relying on your radio? Visit npr.org to be connected to your local station wherever you are and wherever the news takes you. Get your vital mix of rigorously reported local and national stories, all live, free, and at your fingertips at npr.org.
Hi, I'm Jen White from 1A, the home of good conversation. But what makes it great are the ideas and insights you bring to the show every day. It seems only fair that when you make room for us, we make room for you. Listen to the 1A podcast from WAMU and NPR.
Hachi Machi, the 2024 Through the Roof Tour is about to launch, baby. Come out and see the boys. It's the stand-up comedy show, and then we answer your garbage questions. You've seen the clips. You know it's a good time. Grab the squad and come see the boys, baby.
Yeah, it starts April 17th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Then April 18th, we're going to Nashville, Tennessee. April 19th in Tampa, Florida at the Tampa Theater. April 20th at the Center Stage Theater in Atlanta, Georgia. Get all those tickets and tickets for all the other cities on the Through the Roof Tour at RUGarbage.com. Not so fast there, gang. Shout out to Mint Mobile real quick. You're already paying for rent, for groceries, gas, or electric. You don't need to spend a ton on your phone bill. Mint Mobile has you covered with plans for just $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. It sounds too good to be true, but it's real. My wife uses it. She's been using it for years. It's fantastic. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You keep your same phone, your phone number, all your contacts, and it couldn't be easier to make the switch. To get this new customer offer for your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/garbage. That's mintmobile.com/garbage. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/garbage. Additional taxes and fees and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Now let's get to the show.
Welcome to another exciting edition of Are You Garbage? The show where you find out if your favorite comedians are classy individuals or absolute trash. Now, here are your hosts, Kevin Ryan and H. Foley.
Hey, everybody out there, and welcome back to everybody's favorite podcast. This is Are You Garbage?
Oh, yeah.
It's a little show we sit down with your favorite comedians, and we find out if they're going to be classy or if they're just a big old piece of trash. I'm your host, H. Foley, coming at you on a beautiful day. We're out back here at Tootie's in a new edition. She's upstairs shaking off the weekend a little bit.
Okay.
A couple of aspirin, a little liquid IV, trying to get her head on straight, and a bowl of chili for some reason.
Got to clean her out.
My co-host is coming at you from right next to me. He is the CEO of Are You Garbage. He is an international businessman and my best pal in the whole wide world. Give it up for KJ, Kevin James Ryan, everybody.
What up, gang? Thanks for tuning in. As always, please make sure you rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. Full video available on YouTube. As you know, those numbers are Root Cooking. And obviously the greatest website of all time, www.patreon.com/RUGarbage. You go over there, you sign up, you get up to 2 bajillion hours worth of content over there.
Yes, you do. Make sure you go to RUGarbage.com to get all your tour tickets for the True to Roof Tour 2024, baby. We're coming everywhere. And how about a nice shout out to our producer extraordinaire, the Magic Man. Makes us all look good. Works the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s. He crosses the T's and he dots the I's. It's T-Bone McScruffins, Toby McMullen, everybody.
How you doing, boys?
Hey, pal.
We have an all-time silly goose.
We got a pal in here.
Oh, good time. It's just a guy who walks in and says, ooh, I'm about to have some fun.
Lives in a neighborhood, stops by, knocks on the back door, come in, have a cup of coffee, sit down, shoot the shit a little bit. That's right, gang. The long hair ain't lying. We couldn't be more excited to have our incredibly, and I mean incredibly special guest back with us again today. He is an extremely funny stand-up comedian and podcaster. You can hear him every week on his amazing podcast, Friday Night Greg, and he's got a brand new comedy special out right now on his YouTube page. Nobody presents Greg Stone. Give it up for the one, the only, Greg Stone, everybody. Woo-woo! Let the dogs out. Detective Greg Stone with that outfit on.
Right, but seriously, who let the dogs out? My dog got hit by a fucking car and no one will know what to do. Who let my fucking dog out? Thanks for having me, boys. I like radio voice. Thank you, boys. Good to be back.
There you go, pal.
Toad, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Couldn't be happier.
I love seeing you, pal.
No, me too. I got a special guest who might be popping in. I don't want to spoil it, but maybe we'll see him in a little bit.
Okay. I've never been more nervous in my life.
He's a good friend.
Who do you owe money to?
I got $200 to puppet. It's gonna be a good time. I wish. No, it's a friend. It's my friend, Big Daddy Vapes. Good guy. He comes in.
Big Daddy Vapes.
Big Daddy Vapes.
Okay.
We'll see. Maybe we'll see. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. Did you ever have a dog get hit like that or anything like that when you were a kid?
Oh my God, I did.
You did?
I kind of wasn't thinking about it until you just said it.
Thanks for bringing that up.
He brought it up.
No.
You made it real. Did you say Rusty?
No, it wasn't Rusty. Rusty didn't go out like that.
The
My
mom
stepdad.
got Rusty.
Rusty died on the Arizona. What are you talking about?
We had a dog. We had these dogs, and every time one would die, my stepfather would immediately replace it with the exact dog.
Love it.
And so all of the
I think
dogs,
that's what you gotta do, right?
Yeah.
To not feel the pain.
He never felt any pain.
That's not good.
With Willie, I don't want to touch him.
Yeah.
But Willie, when Willie was ready to go, I was going to school. I wasn't going to say
Willie sounds like your younger brother or something.
These are all names from guys he knows in the dog track now.
Hey, Rusty
and Willie.
Then there was Bilbo. There was Cleveland. He was from Texas.
Willie owned an auto body shop.
Okay.
I don't know why we think the story. It's way too dark. And my stepfather goes, I was like, all right, see ya, George, go to school, whatever. And he goes, say goodbye to Willie. And I went, bye, Willie. He goes, I'm putting him down today. That was it. He just said, say goodbye like that. I'm like, what the fuck?
It also sounds like he made this decision on his own without like running it by the family.
He's 3 years old.
Surprise! He's like, oh, damn. Now I can't talk to you until I give you the press.
Okay.
You know, Foley, we're on the same page with things.
We are.
And I have this storage space full of toys, and I'm like, come, I gotta bring a little something for Foley. And I gotta say, Toby, though, I completely forgot you existed. I love you.
Man, the truth hurts sometimes. It hurts sometimes.
I thought they were pushing the buttons themselves. I don't know. I got something in my bag.
I gave you a goddamn hug when you walked in.
I couldn't have been happier to see it. I've never felt more warmth in my life.
He called you Tony.
I don't know what happened. I just walked in. I'm like, oh, motherfucker, you didn't bring presents for the nephew. Anyway, I got a present. This is very exciting for me because I like to bring presents. This was from my storage space. And my wife's got me selling stuff now. I'm getting rid of stuff.
It's Rusty.
It's a dead dog carcass.
It's a stuffed Willie.
No, it's a gun with no cigar.
What's that?
This, my friend, is
Whoa.
a Mezco Destro. This is a high-end, 112 figure, premium action figure.
In the bag?
I love it. In the bag. I accidentally bought 13 of them.
I remember that. I remember hearing stories like, yeah, I bought four. I won a bid. I won 47 bids on the same thing.
So we got too many. So one goes to you, and listen, Kippy, I know, little Kippy,
better be packing heaters in there for me.
Let me tell you that, though, you open that thing, you're gonna be like, this is unfucking-believable. It
smells like weed.
What, okay.
Yeah. This is nice. We'll put this up. He's put together already?
Yeah. Well,
I thought you were going to hand me a model.
So many accessories, though.
Okay.
Open that thing up.
You want to open it up now?
I mean, I don't know if it's good for the podcast.
No, what the hell? I'll open it up.
So many. And
Put
there's
it
a little
like G.I. Joe.
There's a little package in there, silica. Don't eat that. It'll kill you. It'll kill you dead.
Hey, don't snort that, fat boy. He's all right.
That was a great Kevin James bit. He goes, "Who buys a radio?" He goes, "Ooh, cool, go."
Now you.
It's a good-looking Destro.
Dude, it's got full clothing, lots of
His hands fell off. Lots of hands.
So many hands.
He's got a number one hand.
He points at the boys.
Okay.
He says, "Go get them."
There you go. Look at that.
That's a high-quality, premium.
Beautiful.
I just spent on it.
You know I love G. Ooh, this is nice. Whoa, that's covered?
Yeah.
Wow, these are actual clothes.
Yeah.
He's got a piece on it, too.
This is a thing that you hand on to your children. Now, I know you're not into action figures.
Sure.
So I brought you a little something I think that you could enjoy.
Okay.
Chicken fingers.
A bag of cigarettes.
And I understand you like Marlboros. These are the gold. These are the Marlboro Lights. Gold.
Why are they not in a bag?
Because I had to buy them loose, the lady wouldn't sell me the package.
Wait,
are you serious?
Individually.
You bought a pack of Lucy's?
Oh, yeah. $3 each.
It's a $70,000 pack of cigs you got.
And I ate the apples out of that bag, so they had apple taste to them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Exciting, right?
I mean, I feel a little homeless at the moment.
Those are getting thrown out.
No, they're brand new. I still got the... yeah, I don't want to ruin the bid. I mean, I still got the box. If you want to return them.
Return them? You get a gift receipt
It's
with
not
it?
for you. You can take them back. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good bit.
Oh, I thought you were going to pull out a receipt, genuinely.
You're still in the Marbles, right?
Oh, yeah.
Stoney, I appreciate it. You know, I
Yes.
love. You know, on the low, Uncle Hank loves his toys. He loves his cartoons. Me and Stoney have a strong connection with it.
Yeah.
He gave me my Superman, my Christopher. I think it was Mezco.
Oh, yeah, same company.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They do a really good job.
Yeah.
get him.
He'll be up on the set very soon.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I got
love
I
it.
didn't even want to give you that thing, but the idea of giving you
Yeah,
cigarettes.
13 of them. And do you actually have it? Do you have a storage unit now?
Yeah, I got a storage unit too. We got problems.
Man, when you die and that thing defaults and they're doing storage wars and they open up that thing, holy shit.
So my kids
The richest 9-year-old ever.
every year for my birthday, my plan is I go, for your birthday, we go to the storage unit. You pick one thing. And they can just rifle through it. You know what I mean?
It's pretty good.
That's pretty weird. Yeah. I just thought the idea of
I would be mad.
What? Yeah.
Dad, you're holding out on me? You got all these toys here?
You gotta go to like Essex County, New Jersey to get a used toy.
Yeah, that's not gonna look good.
Dad, why don't we go play football or something?
Especially if you're dressed like that, bringing a little kid out to a storage unit.
Yeah, come to my box. Come into the metal room. Yeah, no, you know.
He's walking out with one toy and tight lips. That's saying a word.
That's a fun bit to give my children. Psych. Anyway. All right, why those things? Want to answer some questions? I'm next. All right. So, where are you from? All right, cool.
Half a second of silence, and he freaks out.